I still remember the sound of my grandmother's teacup gently touching the saucer. It was such a small sound, but somehow it became the last peaceful moment before everything changed. My name is Emma, and my grandmother Rose raised me after my parents passed away when I was 12. She wasn't just my grandmother, she was my entire world. She worked double shifts at a small bakery, skipped buying new clothes for herself, and somehow still managed to make every birthday feel magical. She taught me one simple lesson: respect costs nothing, but it tells people exactly who you are. I carried those words with me every day. Grandma was 82 now. Her hands trembled a little when she poured tea, and she walked slower than she used to, but she still smiled at everyone she met. Everyone in town loved her. Well, almost everyone. My sister Lisa married a man named Derek 3 years ago. The first time we met him, he seemed charming. He opened doors, brought flowers, and knew exactly what to say. But after the wedding, the mask slowly disappeared. He constantly criticized people. He laughed at waiters. He talked over my sister. And worst of all, he treated Grandma like she was invisible. At family dinners, he'd sigh whenever she spoke. If she forgot a word, he'd finish her sentence with a sarcastic smile. "You're getting forgetful again, Rose," he'd say. Everyone looked uncomfortable. No one said anything, not even Lisa. She always whispered the same excuse afterward: "That's just how Derek is. He doesn't mean anything by it." But every cruel comment stole a little more of Grandma's confidence. She stopped telling stories. She stopped laughing as loudly. She even apologized for speaking too much. Watching that broke my heart. I wanted to confront him many times. Grandma always stopped me. "Don't create problems for the family," she'd whisper while squeezing my hand. So I stayed quiet. For her. I kept telling myself that someday, Derek would realize how lucky he was to have someone like Grandma in his life. I couldn't have been more wrong. Because what happened at my cousin's engagement party changed everything. None of us knew that one careless decision by Derek would expose the kind of man he truly was. And by the end of that evening, he would wish he had never embarrassed the woman who spent her entire life putting everyone else before herself. The engagement party was beautiful. There were white flowers everywhere, soft music playing in the background, and 3 generations of our family gathered under one roof. Grandma wore her favorite blue dress. She had spent an hour deciding which necklace to wear because she wanted to look nice for the family photos. When she walked in, everyone smiled. Everyone, except Derek. He rolled his eyes and muttered loud enough for several people to hear, "I hope this doesn't turn into another history lesson." A few people laughed awkwardly. Grandma pretended she hadn't heard. I did. I looked at Lisa. She lowered her eyes. Dinner started, and everything seemed peaceful. Grandma stood up with her glass of sparkling cider. She wanted to congratulate the happy couple. Her voice shook slightly. "Family is life's greatest gift." She had barely finished the first sentence. Derek interrupted. "Can we keep this short? Some of us aren't here for a bedtime story." The room became silent. You could feel the embarrassment hanging in the air. Grandma smiled weakly. "Of course." She sat down without finishing. I saw tears gathering in her eyes. My hands clenched under the table. Still, I stayed quiet, because I didn't want to ruin someone else's celebration. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. Later that evening, everyone gathered for photographs. Grandma walked carefully toward the front. She moved slowly because of her arthritis. Derek sighed dramatically. "You're holding everyone up." Before anyone could react, he reached toward her arm. Not gently, not respectfully. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her forward as if she were an inconvenience instead of a human being. Grandma stumbled. Her balance disappeared for a moment. The look on her face wasn't fear. It was humiliation. That expression will stay with me forever. Something inside me finally broke. I stepped between them immediately. "Take your hand off her." My voice was calm. Too calm. Derek laughed. "Relax, I was helping." Helping? Helping doesn't leave someone's wrist turning red. Helping doesn't make an 82-year-old woman apologize for almost falling. I looked directly into his eyes. "You owe her an apology." He folded his arms. "Or what?" The room froze. No music. No conversations. Just silence. For years, everyone had ignored his behavior because it was easier than confronting it. Not anymore. I didn't scream. I didn't insult him. I simply spoke loudly enough for every guest to hear. "You've spent 3 years embarrassing the kindest person in this family." Today, everyone finally saw it. Several relatives nodded. One aunt quietly said, "She's right." Then another. then another. The silence Derek had always counted on was gone. Derek glanced around the room, expecting someone to defend him. No one did. Instead, people walked toward Grandma. My uncle wrapped his arm around her shoulders. My cousin handed her a chair. Even the photographer quietly said, "We'll wait as long as Rose needs." Grandma wasn't the problem. She never had been. Derek suddenly found himself standing completely alone. He tried to laugh. Everyone's overreaction. But nobody laughed with him. Then something unexpected happened. Lisa stood up. For years she had stayed silent. That night, she found her voice. She looked at Derek with tears in her eyes. "I've spent too long making excuses for you." The room became perfectly still. "You didn't embarrass my grandmother today." She paused. "You embarrassed yourself." Derek's confident smile disappeared. He tried to interrupt. Lisa didn't let him. Every family dinner, every cruel joke, every disrespectful comment. "I told myself you'd change." She shook her head. "I was wrong." Then she walked over to Grandma. She hugged her tightly. "I'm so sorry." Grandma cried quietly into her shoulder, not because she was hurt anymore, but because someone had finally stood beside her. Derek picked up his jacket. He looked around one last time. Nobody stopped him. Nobody followed him. He simply walked out. The celebration continued without him, and somehow, it became warmer than it had been all evening. Weeks later, Lisa made a difficult decision. She chose peace over pretending. She stopped defending behavior that had slowly hurt everyone around her. Family gatherings became different after that. Grandma laughed again. She told stories again. She even started baking her famous apple pies for Sunday dinners. One afternoon, she looked at me while we sat on her porch. "Thank you," she whispered. I smiled. "For what?" She squeezed my hand. "For reminding me that kindness doesn't mean accepting disrespect." Those words stayed with me. People often think revenge means making someone suffer, but I've learned something very different. Sometimes the strongest form of justice is simply refusing to stay silent. Because disrespect grows in silence, but it disappears when ordinary people finally choose courage. And every time I hear Grandma laughing with our family again, I know that standing up for someone you love is never something you'll regret. Sometimes the loudest victory isn't an argument. It's watching the person who tried to diminish someone else realize they no longer have an audience. That day, Derek didn't lose because someone humiliated him. He lost because the truth finally caught up with him. And Grandma? She finally remembered what she had taught me all those years ago. Respect costs nothing, but when someone refuses to give it, they usually end up paying the highest price themselves.